Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Leon Blevins of El Paso Community College Television. You may hear a little echo because I'm in a building here that belongs to the rescue mission of El Paso. It's a new facility. In fact, there are several buildings in this complex. My special guest today is Blake Barrow, who is director of the rescue mission. So we're going to spend some time here learning about him and about the work and about this mission. Thank you for inviting us over here.
Thank you.
This is great. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this field of work, working with rescue missions.
Well, as succinctly as I can put it, it's a divine calling.
Okay.
I came to El Paso in 1988 out of Baylor Law School and started practicing law at Scott Holtz, Fuel, Finger, and Thurmond. Eventually I had my own law firm. It was Barrow and Craig. And then God comes knocking on the door, and if you've read my book, that's chapter 1, which is about 30 pages long.
Okay.
But I gave up the for-profit practice of law. I still do a lot of pro bono work, and started running the rescue mission, and it's just absolutely fantastic. I love it.
Where did you originally come from, high school and all that, before you went to Baylor?
From Houston.
From the Houston area.
Raised in Houston, yeah.
Okay. And then what about going to work for the rescue mission? Is this the only job that you've had in this particular field?
In this one, yes. I've been here 19 years.
Okay. And you started when it was over in an old silo on Paisano Drive?
Yeah. Actually, all of that property on Paisano was originally a cottonseed oil refinery.
Right.
And so we took over some old industrial buildings that were just built to handle cottonseed. And here we've built from scratch for the very first time in the history of the rescue mission. We go back to 1952. Mm-hmm. Now, this building is a rehabilitation job, but the main shelter that we have across the parking lot was built from the dirt up.
Okay. Now, about how many people do you have, say, in any given week since you've been, say, even working here at this building?
We've been filling up. We have 190 beds, and I think we're up to about 160 right now. And the old facility had 120 beds. So that's a 50% increase in the capacity. Now we're divided up into several population groups, each living in different sections of the building. For example, we have a 16-bed facility for hospice and respite care, people getting out of hospitals that have no place else to go. That's up 100% from the old location.
Wow.
Now, on the single men's side is where we're the most crowded. We have 66 beds and they're all full. So we're already looking toward developing phase 2, which will be on the next lot that we have at 130 North Cotton.
Well, this is a thrill for me. I was a young ministerial student at Wayland Baptist College years ago, back in the late 50s, early 1960s, and would go and do counseling work and preach some in rescue missions in that area. And the facilities were rather dilapidated and didn't look very wholesome, and you'd bring people in off the streets and all of that. You've gone from that kind of thing to this. Isn't this uplifting to have this quality that your people are coming in and they see this and think, this is great?
It's probably a different mindset in the homeless provider world. I've never been one to follow a model. I don't care what the model is. I look at the people that we serve and I try to figure out what is the best thing for these folks that we have. And one of my favorite scriptures is when Jesus talks about when you give a feast, don't invite all your friends, go out and invite the poor and the crippled and the blind. And so I read through the gospel and it says, put forth the very best that you have in caring for the poor. And when you care for the poor, that's just like caring for Jesus himself.
Exactly. Now, you can't bring everybody in. There was a time my wife and I went to seminary in Fort Worth, and we operated a girls' home for a short time. I have an unusual background, all right? And there were some that we just couldn't take everybody in. Had to make decisions about that, and you do that too. I know that they talk about people on the street people. Some are alcoholics, some have mental issues, and so on. Some just lost their jobs and can't afford to live anymore. Take those three categories and how you find them with your population.
Well, we run a drug and alcohol treatment program. And my experience has been, if you look at the causes of homelessness and the individuals that we see in El Paso, probably only about 30% are due to drugs and alcohol. Now I see a greater instance of mental disability and people trying to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. But the real underlying factor is some mental disorder and lack of psychiatric care that we have here. But you know, for that group, the drug and alcohol group, the primary criteria is, do you want to change? Do you want the help? And if the answer is no, I'm perfectly happy where I am. There's a guy just up Cotton Street. I see him every time I drive by, and he's got his cardboard sign, and he says, "Homeless vet needs beers," and he's got 2 mugs of beer artfully drawn on the cardboard. And
You'd rather feed him than give him a beer.
well, absolutely. I'm not going to give you a beer. And obviously that's your first priority. And as long as that remains your priority, guess what? I really can't help you.
Now, what about these that lost a job? Or say a husband walks away and leaves a woman with a child or 2. Aren't they truly distraught when you get them, when you see them here?
Oh, yes. And our job is to rebuild them, put them back together, and that's the most fun thing I do. You get somebody coming in, beaten down, self-esteem is at 0. Now, if self-esteem is at 0, what does it mean that someone cares enough to put a rose on your dining table?
Well, your assistant Megan, I believe, is put the rose there for us.
Yeah.
And we'll talk with you about your staff in a little bit, but that's true. It makes us feel so good to be in a place of this quality.
Yeah.
And if you lost your home, you've lost maybe your husband, and you find yourself under these circumstances, you feel like a failure. Don't they have that feeling? They have failed.
Exactly. The individual feels like a failure, but then when they walk into the facility and you treat them like royalty, then the mindset starts to change. If you had a facility that, okay, this is where I belong, then the environment you have does not contribute to the change in the person.
Now, you help train them for some jobs and things like that so that when they go out, they don't just go back to the street.
Right.
What about some of your job training programs?
Well, we have a full-time worker who is our job placement director.
Okay.
So she helps people draw up resumes. She has contacts. We'll even drive folks out to job interviews. For a lot of folks, we sit down with them, okay, where do you want to go in 5 years? And maybe getting to where you want to go requires some additional education. So I've got one lady going to community college now, I have another one at UTEP, and they're improving their lives one class at a time.
I would suspect from some of your staff that I saw at the very entrance of the building that some of them were here as homeless and you worked them into your program. Tell me about that. Success stories.
Well, some of our very best counselors used to be homeless. And as you well know, God uses the difficult times that we go through to then minister to others who are coming through those difficult times. And so the head of our drug and alcohol program was an addict herself for 20 years, lived on the street, did every drug under the sun. And she's now been clean for about 15 years. Which means that she can look at folks and say, hey, I have been where you are. I have a personal understanding of what you are going through. And you may think your problems are insurmountable. I'm here to tell you they're not, because I have overcome, and you can too, and let me show you the way.
I had a sister, both my sisters were alcoholics, and one of them, she and her husband, he is also an alcoholic, they went through AA program, and they became counselors. And my sister would go into the jail and help people in the jails, and then when they got out, work with them in the rehabilitation facility and things like that. It was recognized statewide by Ann Richards when she was governor.
Yeah.
Success story.
Yeah.
So you don't have, when you get down, you don't stay down. You need to get up.
That's right.
And do that. Can you think about some, besides one you just mentioned, other success stories? Maybe that you've seen what they did when they went out and got a job out in the community.
Well, I'm going to surprise you with a success story, because a lot of folks would not think this is a success story, but it is. and it has to do with where the person is coming from. Now, many years ago, we had a gentleman that was going through the drug and alcohol program, and some of our staff suspected that he had relapsed on drugs, and we have these drug testing kits, and you pee in a cup, and there's a little card that slides into the cup.
Right.
And after 2 minutes, then you lift the card up, and if it has 2 lines on there, it's positive, 1 line, it's negative, and so forth. And it tests for 5 different categories of drugs. Well, here is this man, he's been in our drug and alcohol program for a month. And I do the drug test for him, and he's sitting there in my office, he's in front of my desk, and we're waiting for the 2 minutes to pass to read the card.
To watch the pee game.
That's right. Now here's the fascinating thing. When the 2 minutes is up, I lift the card up, and I'm careful to hold the card over the cup, because the urine is dripping onto the cup, and I don't want it to get on my desk. And I read the card, and I look at him, and I said, "Congratulations, it's negative." And you know what he says to me? "Can I have that card?"
Oh.
And I'm going, "You got to be kidding me."
That's his trophy.
I mean, you don't even want a Kleenex to wipe it off. You got to be kidding me. This thing is still dripping, and he wants the card. And he was about 35 years old, and he looks at me and he says, "That would be the first negative drug test I've had since I was 12.
That's a wonderful story. I like that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. We're going to take a break here just a minute and give us time to think about this and decide which one we want to go in the last part of this interview. And so, wow, I love your stories.
Thank you.
Okay, those of you that are watching, take just a minute and we'll be right back.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath.
He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
I love Toes because she's a lazy diva. Toes does whatever she wants, obviously.
Welcome back to Perspectives El Paso. We are still here at the rescue mission in El Paso, Texas. I'm visiting with Blake Barrow, who is the director of this program. What do you think about Connie?
Oh, she's a great asset to the organization. She loves the work, she loves the people. Sometimes we have to stop her from taking some of them home with her.
My wife used to do that with deaf children when she worked with them. She'd bring some of them home with her.
Yeah.
Oh, so she's in the area of the financial part of this operation. Tell us about how you have this organization structured besides the financial, et cetera.
Well, we have the financial side, the marketing side, because we're dependent on the people of El Paso for our funding. You've got to have gas in the car to make it run. Mm-hmm. So we have a marketing department, and then we have a programs department, which would be all of the services that we offer for the people in need, our job search program, our drug and alcohol rehab program, the chaplain's office, and then we have the facilities department. So we have a person that oversees all the buildings, the grounds, the vehicles, that sort of thing.
And about the total number that are employed here?
It's about 30.
About 30, okay. Yeah. Which area of this do you think that needs the most work done on it since you've moved out of the silo over there and you've moved to these buildings? You're now spread out. What are you having to do?
The big thing is appraising the need. And because before, when we were over on Paisano, we were far away from downtown. There was no mass transit to get to us. We had the Burlington Northern Railroad track blocking our driveway. And then behind it, going toward the interstate, were 2 railroad tracks for the Union Pacific. So we were in a very isolated position. Well, the big question now is, what is the demand for services going forward if we are now in an area where there's a bus stop right outside on McGoffin? People can actually get to us.
Praise the Lord.
Amen. I mean, that's what we're here for. But as an example, the next build out, I spoke earlier about phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 of development, I want a separate shelter on the Cotton Street lot that would be for families and for single women. So for the first time, we would have the children that are living at the rescue mission being housed in a building on a separate lot from most of the single adults.
Okay.
Now, huge move forward, needs to be done, and you know, you can say a lot or take all kinds of guess as to how people became homeless. You know, what did they do? Well, the children didn't do anything at all. They are the innocent victims in the homelessness mix. And the statistics are that the average age of a homeless person in the United States is about 10 years old. Which means you may think of the old guy on the street corner holding a sign. But the reality is that more homeless people in El Paso are children.
We've seen some news reports, local news reports on the basic channels here, with some of the women and their children in the shelter before you made the move over here.
Right. Well, I know we need another facility to provide better care for our children. The big question mark is that a 100-bed facility? Is it a 300-bed facility? So over the next couple of years, as we're raising money to develop that new facility, we get to appraise the need and see where we go from here.
Now, you were forced out of that other facility by the construction of the loop.
Right.
TxDOT took it away from you. Of course, they gave you some money.
Yes.
How much money did the state give you to move out of there?
It came to a little over $13.5 million. And of course, that had to be used then to build this facility here. We purchased 2 city blocks from the city of El Paso. The water department had been using those 2 lots, and the land purchase alone was almost $2 million. And then the build out here. So basically, our message to the city of El Paso is, okay, here's what we've done with the money that TxDOT has provided. Now let's talk about what the needs are going forward and how much more can we do with additional funding.
There was some controversy about you building in this area. There's always that not in my backyard syndrome that takes place. Some people don't want the homeless in their backyard. I just did an interview recently with someone from the Opportunity Center that some people from El Paso Community College helped start years ago. Similar situation. And you interact with them, don't you?
Oh, all the time.
You cooperate and do things together with them. Let me get you to leave with our audience your telephone number you would like for them to be able to get in touch with you, and a website if they want to find out more about you.
Sure. The telephone number is 532-2575. And interestingly, we did in the historical research moving over here, I discovered we'd have that same phone number since 1952.
Wow.
But as far as the modern things we do, the website is RMELP, like Rescue Mission El Paso.org.
Good. And I want to show this to our audience. Stories from the Shelter, a lawyer's ministry with God's children who are homeless, by Blake W. Barrow. I knew you just had to get this story told, right?
Well, it's just like the story with the guy with the card. There are so many fascinating people that I've met here in 19 years at the Rescue Mission, and so many great stories. And unless you've been here, one, you don't know who the people are that are homeless in the world. So I actually had a guy at the mission that had a PhD in sociology. And he had moved here because he'd heard there was an opening for a job at UTEP, and he was going over to apply. And homeless man with a PhD. You wouldn't think about it. And I sat down with him one time, his name was Daniel, and I said, Daniel, how many books are there currently in print that accurately describe homelessness in America? And he thinks about it about 10 seconds. He says, there aren't any. Right, I knew
So
that.
you need to do it.
So we did it. Yeah, Daniel helped, but this is our work. It was published a couple of years ago. You can get it on Amazon.com.
Okay. This is a treat for me to be sitting here with an author writing about the homeless and working with the homeless. You have actually, how many buildings here now?
We have 3 buildings on this lot. Well, actually, there's a 4th one, and it's a historical story. In the far back end of the lot, we have the stables where the mules pulled the trolley cars prior to 1902.
Oh my. Oh, that's
So that's how far back it goes.
It's hard for me to, it just overwhelms me being here. For some reason, there's something about it, I think back to my past and what you're doing here in this ministry. You have a chapel in there.
Yes.
In your new building. Tell me about that when you bring the people into the chapel.
Well, the chapel is the center of the mission, and it's the center of the ministry that we do. So our role is to preach the gospel to the poor. And of course, we're all about rehabilitation, and the best way for rehabilitation to occur is to change the person from the inside out. So we introduce the people to Christ. So we have chapel services about 4 or 5 times a week. We have a full-time chaplain here, and it's a beautiful place to get in touch with God. Just a very quiet setting. It's open all the time. The acoustics in there are magnificent. So there's an electronic organ in the front, and when it fires up, it just fills the whole room with music. It's glorious.
In your ministry in this area, have you had some that went through this, came in as a homeless person, and go out as an evangelist?
Oh yeah.
They go out to preach the word of the Lord, and they have their own experiences they can share with those that are listening.
Oh yes, that's fun.
And you have good memories of that. Again, I'm almost speechless trying to think about what we could talk about and discuss here with all of your programs. I just heard on the radio news the other day about a couple of men. I can't remember, they'd just gotten out of prison. I don't remember the state. I turned in on the radio and I didn't catch the state. But they were taught to cook while they were in prison.
Yeah.
And when they came out of prison, they started doing some things, cooking food. They bought a food truck. And I believe they said they moved to Puerto Rico, and they had ties there. And they became very successful with their food truck. And the kids would come from school, walk from school, and get away from the cafeteria and go to the food truck. They'd go tell their parents, and the next thing they knew, they were investing in others and spreading the word through their food trucks.
Everybody's attracted to food, and we love to eat. I love to cook. And I've been studying barbecue for 40 years. Now at the old facility, we had a furniture factory. We started that in 2003, and that was our vocational rehabilitation program. Let's get people back to work, and we'll teach them to build things. Well, Texas Department of Transportation tore that building down. It's right in the middle of the roadway. That's okay. It's time for us to do something else. So in refocusing our vocational rehab program, we've started a catering business, and we're going to rehabilitate a building on the other lot that goes back to 1905. And that will be the dining room for the Hallelujah BBQ.
Okay. Now this building dates back to when?
1912.
1912. Probably built better than some of the modern buildings that we.
If there's ever a tornado,
have.
come here.
It's
Yeah.
structurally sound.
It's a fascinating building. These are the original trusses from 1912. We just painted them black. The water department had added on to the side of the building for their meter repair shop. And we took that part of the building off, the addition. So this is the original structure, and there's a plaque on the corner of the building saying it was built as the city warehouse in 1912.
Now in your new building, I noticed you also have a library.
Yes.
Has this experience caused some of them to start to read, or start to read more than they did before, or maybe start doing some writing?
You know, I don't think I
Or
have.
do you bring teachers in that teach them some of these skills?
Well, I have. I love to teach writing.
Oh, okay.
And we have some people that they're going to college, and I'll grade their papers and check it for English grammar. But you know, I don't think I've ever passed through the front of the mission during daylight hours that I have not seen people in the library.
Okay. Well, I think that's important because they need to expand rather than just being fed
Oh yeah,
physically. They need to be fed spiritually, and they need to be filled intellectually
that's right.
for the whole person. I'm holistic. Can you tell that?
I got that.
I think holistic. The whole person is important when you bring someone off the streets into the mission. What's your conclusion?
My conclusion is the rescue mission of El Paso has never been in a finer position to expand, to serve the needs of the people of El Paso. And it's all because of the generosity of El Pasoans. You know, you might say, well, you built this because of the money you got from TxDOT. Well, no, TxDOT bought out the buildings that we had.
Right.
Which means essentially they cashed out all of the contributions of all of our faithful donors over the years. So everything that you see here has been built by the people of El Paso because they are so generous and they care about the poor and they want to change the world, and we do that one person at a time.
And you need that on an ongoing basis.
Amen.
No doubt about that. Well, thanks for tuning in and watching this interesting show at this interesting place with a very interesting man. Thanks.
God bless you.
Good to meet you. Good to see you. Tune in for another program in the future. I'm Leon Blevins.